Have you ever, like, stumbled upon a topic and suddenly you're seeing it everywhere?
Hmm.
That's skin picking for me lately. I
Yeah.
had no idea it was so common.
Right.
And the connection to autism,
Yeah.
super fascinating.
Yeah. It's a connection that often gets um, overlooked or even misunderstood.
Yeah,
I think a lot of people just kind of write it off as a bad habit.
right.
But for individuals with autism, it can be a lot deeper than that. It can be really rooted in things like sensory processing or anxiety, differences in, even brain wiring.
It's like this whole other layer to it.
The exact.
And that's kind of what we're here to uncover today, right? So
Yeah.
for our listener who's been exploring this connection too,
Yeah, absolutely.
we're going deep into their stack of sources to really try to connect the dots.
Let's break it down.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So before we get into all the details of the autism connection,
Right.
let's make sure we're all clear on exactly what we're even talking about here.
You're right. Clarity is key. So when we talk about excoriation disorder,
Okay.
we're not just talking about like picking at a scab every now and then.
Yeah.
This is recurring,
Right.
often compulsive skin picking that causes real damage,
Yeah.
distress, and it even starts to impact their work life, their relationships, everything.
And there's that element of wanting to stop, but
Yes.
but not being able to.
Exactly. It can feel very much like, an itch that needs to be scratched,
Right.
where
Yeah.
there's like this buildup of tension beforehand, and then during the act of picking itself, there's a sense of relief.
So we know sensory sensitivities are common in autism. So is that the main link to skin picking then?
It's definitely a major factor.
Okay.
Imagine experiencing like a constant itch or irritation that other people, they don't register. You know what I mean?
Right.
So for them, picking at their skin can become a way to try to manage those like really intense or overwhelming sensations.
Okay.
But it's not quite as simple as a direct cause and effect.
Okay. So give our listener, like, what else is there? What makes this connection so nuanced?
Well, studies suggest that almost a quarter
Ow.
of autistic individuals experience excoriation disorder,
Okay.
compared to maybe 5% of the general population.
Wow. 23% is a lot higher than I would have thought.
Yeah, it's a big jump.
Yeah.
And so while sensory sensitivities are, central to this,
Right.
we also have to think about things like anxiety and emotional regulation,
Okay.
even how certain textures or fabrics can be triggering.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's a very complex interplay of factors.
It makes me think too, like, it's not always just an internal feeling, right? Sometimes it can be something in the environment that sets it off.
Absolutely. That external environment plays a huge role.
Yeah.
For a lot of people, think about fluorescent lights, certain sounds,
Right.
maybe even the feeling of clothing tags.
Oh, yeah.
Those can all be potential triggers for someone with sensory sensitivities.
And so when we're talking about the impact of this disorder, it's not just like a few marks on the skin, is it?
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
The impact runs much, much deeper than what you can, see on the surface.
Right.
We're talking about social stigma.
Yeah.
Maybe avoiding social events because they're self-conscious about the marks on their skin.
And then there's the risk of infection from open sores.
Exactly.
And not to mention, like, the emotional toll that this takes, the
Yeah.
shame, the frustration, the feeling of being misunderstood.
It can be incredibly isolating.
Yeah, and we can't forget about the families who are supporting their loved ones with this.
Right.
They're on this journey too, right?
Absolutely.
Trying to understand and help while also not, wanting to exacerbate any of the shame or anxiety that someone might be feeling.
It's a delicate balance.
Yeah.
And education is so important for families navigating this.
Right.
And that actually reminds me, you had a great question earlier about, some of the specific therapies that have shown promise in treating excoriation disorder, especially in those with autism.
I'm always curious about that, because it's one thing to talk about the challenges, but
Yeah.
what can people actually do?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there are definitely some promising approaches out there.
Okay.
One therapy that's shown a lot of promise is cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT as it's, more commonly known.
CBT, I've definitely heard of that.
Yes.
So that's all about recognizing and changing negative thought patterns, right?
Exactly. And in the context of skin picking, CBT can help individuals become more aware of their triggers,
Okay.
whether those triggers are internal, or external.
Right.
It also helps equip them with the tools to kind of challenge those thoughts that might be fueling that urge to pick. And then it helps them develop those healthier coping mechanisms to use instead.
So it's like not just putting like a Band-Aid on the problem. It's
Right.
really getting to the root of it.
Exactly. Precisely.
Yeah.
Now, in addition to CBT,
Okay.
there's also habit reversal training,
Right.
or HRT.
Okay.
And HRT focuses more on, increasing awareness of the picking behavior itself
Right.
and then substituting it
Okay.
with a different behavior, hopefully a less harmful one.
So like if someone tends to pick when they're anxious,
Right.
maybe instead they could like try incorporating deep breathing exercises.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Or maybe using a fidget toy.
Right.
Or even something as simple as just clenching their fists for a few seconds.
Okay.
To kind of like redirect that energy, interrupt that urge to pick.
It's about like finding what works
Exact.
for each person.
It really is.
Yeah.
And, speaking of that,
Yeah.
it's important to remember that like professional guidance
Right.
can be so valuable.
Yeah.
Seeking out therapists who specialize in autism and sensory processing
Okay.
can make a world of difference.
So not just any therapist, right?
Exactly.
You got to find the ones who get it.
Finding that good fit.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, beyond therapy,
Yeah.
creating a supportive and understanding environment.
Okay, so what does that look like practically?
It can be as simple as having like a designated calming sensory space in their home.
Okay.
So think soft lighting, maybe some calming scents,
Right.
a weighted blanket.
And then also, like we were talking about, having those different outlets, like fidget toys,
Yeah,
readily available.
exactly.
Okay.
It's about redirecting, not suppressing.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that supportive environment extends beyond just the physical space too, right?
Absolutely.
Like the people in their life need to be understanding and patient as well.
It's a team effort.
Yeah.
Family and friends can play such a key role in this
Right.
by, first of all, educating themselves,
Right.
offering that emotional support without judgment,
Yes.
and understanding that, it's a journey.
Yeah.
It's not, a quick fix.
It's not like flipping a switch.
Exactly.
And sometimes just knowing, like, hey, I'm not the only one going through this can make a world of difference.
It can be so isolating
Yeah.
to deal with this.
Especially when people don't understand the connection to autism.
Exactly. Exactly.
And it's like, it's having that validation.
Right.
That like what you're experiencing is real, it's valid,
Yeah.
and there's support out there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And not being afraid to talk about it.
Yes. 100%.
That's huge too.
It's not about judging
Yeah.
or dismissing it like, oh, it's just a bad habit.
Right.
It's about approaching it with empathy,
Yes.
understanding,
Yeah.
and a willingness to learn
Yeah.
and adapt.
And that's what we're all about here on the deep dive, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Compassionate curiosity.
Speaking of curiosity,
Yeah.
there's another aspect of this that I find really fascinating.
Okay.
It kind of ties back to what you were saying earlier about the sensory aspect of all of this,
Okay.
but it goes in a slightly different direction.
Ooh, our listeners know I love a good plot twist. I love to explore those connections.
So it turns out that
Yeah.
those strategies that are super helpful for, people with autism and excoriation disorder,
Yeah.
the calming sensory environments, those sensory tools,
Okay.
those can actually be beneficial for anyone who struggles with sensory sensitivities,
Oh, interesting.
even if they don't have autism.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's so interesting because it's like that saying, if
Yeah.
you've met one person with autism, you met one person with autism.
Right, right.
Like every experience is different,
But
but there are these like common threads
Yes.
that weave through
I love that, the common threads, yeah.
and connect us in ways we might not expect.
When we start to see those common threads, it broadens our understanding,
Yeah.
not just of autism and skin picking, but like the whole spectrum of human experience.
Mm-hmm.
Think about all the people who, that get overwhelmed in crowded places.
Yeah.
Or can't stand the feeling of certain fabrics.
Yes.
Or like get anxious when they hear certain sounds.
Oh, 100%. I'm one of those people who, like, if I hear styrofoam squeaking, it sets my teeth on edge.
Right,
Ugh.
exactly.
I hate it.
And so, while those sensitivities might not, result in skin picking for everyone,
Right.
it's the same like underlying principle at play,
Yeah.
Our bodies are constantly reacting to sensory input.
Yeah.
And sometimes we just need a little extra support
Yeah.
in managing those responses.
We all have our own, like, sensory fingerprint.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
And so understanding that fingerprint, whether it's our own or someone else's, I think is so key to creating a more compassionate and supportive world for
Hmm.
ourselves and for each other.
It really is like unique to each of us.
Yeah, it's such a good reminder, especially in a world that's so often like,
Right.
this is the way to do it.
Yeah.
But before we wrap up this deep dive, yeah.
I always like to leave our listener with something like to chew on,
Yeah, to
something to
catch.
kind of carry with them.
I like it.
Something that maybe we didn't explicitly say, but
Yeah.
as we were like going through all this,
Yeah.
it's bubbling up to the surface.
And you want to cocoon or anything?
I'm intrigued. What's on your mind?
Well, we've been talking about, skin picking and autism and like sensory stuff, all these little threads.
Hmm.
But I think like the overarching theme here is self-awareness.
Yeah.
Like how often do we actually like stop and think
Right.
about how our bodies are reacting to what's going on?
It's so crucial.
Yeah.
And you're right. I think it's definitely overlooked a lot.
Yeah.
We just go through life.
On autopilot.
Totally.
Just like on to the next thing.
And we're so used to just powering through, trying to like fit into a world
Yeah,
that wasn't really designed for our individual sensory needs.
for sure.
But what if we did take that time?
Yeah.
What if we like,
What would that look like? Yeah, to just be like, why am I like feeling restless right now?
Mm.
What just happened that made me feel that way?
right, exactly.
Or why does that sound make me like cringe inside?
It's about cultivating that mindfulness,
Yeah.
that awareness of your own like internal world.
And that everyone's is going to look a little different.
Exactly.
And I think, maybe if we all practiced a little more of that self-awareness, we would not only be more understanding of ourselves,
Right.
but more compassionate
Yeah.
towards other people.
Now, that is a thought worth holding on to.
It is.
A little self-reflection can go a long way.
For sure. So to everyone listening to the deep dive today,
Mm-hmm.
we hope this has given you some new perspective on this connection
Yeah,
between autism and skin picking.
absolutely.
And just remember, knowledge is power,
Yes.
but understanding, that's connection.
I love that.
You're not alone in this.
We're all on this journey together.
Keep asking questions, keep seeking those answers, and keep those amazing brains of yours buzzing.
Until next time.